Ceremony. Why? Well, I like to start with a story. I'm quite a storyteller. Spending time in Latin America with shamans, one becomes a storyteller. One time I was down there, as the story goes, or rumor has it, the Pope came to Lima. Now the Pope used to travel with a Pope-mobile. He had this glass top, and it was bulletproof. And that way he could drive down the streets of any city and no one could hurt him, and he could wave and they could feel close. Well, the Pope-mobile came late to Lima. So the government sent a limousine. And the Pope got very excited, and he went to the limousine driver and he said, "I haven't driven forever. I'd love to drive." And the limousine driver said, "Well, all right, you're the Pope. Well, what do you want me to do?" He said, "Sit in the back." So the Pope pulls out of the airport, and right away, the police pull him over. And the Pope rolls down the window and says, "Yes, officer." He says, "1 minute." The policeman goes back to his car and he says, I stole somebody very important." And the officer says, "Well, who is it? Is it the mayor of the city? More important. Is it the governor of the province? More important. The president of the country? More important. The president of the UN? Even more important." "Well, who's more important than that?" "I don't know, but he's got the Pope driving for him." I tell that story because we all have the Pope driving for us. We're all God in the back seat and the limousine driver at the same time. Ceremony, well, when you pray, you pray for something from God or the gods and goddesses. When you create, you become one who works with the creative force, the divine force, the gods and goddesses. But when you do ceremony, you become one of the gods and goddesses. We have the ability to manifest the lives we want. I've been blessed to be in the Amazon many times, to be in the Yucatan, to be in the Andes Mountains. And my cards got mixed up, that's not good.
I told you.
Oh, you did. So, when I was young, I first met the witches in Salem at 17. And I started doing ceremony in Salem, Massachusetts with the witches. And I learned to read the tarot, and I learned magic spells. At 19, I had a Latin American politics teacher who had just come back from Peru, and I fell in love, and I went down with $30 in my pocket and stayed 5 weeks. It was a life-changing experience. From then on, every time I could save up enough money, I would go back to Latin America. Because I met an elder the first time I was there and he liked me, he told me to visit this shaman the next time I was there, who told me to visit this shaman the next time. And I got passed along from these crazed, we're talking crazed, Latin American, Amazon, and Andes shamans. Some of them do way too many drugs. Some of them do way too much alcohol. Some of them are just stark raving mad. Now there are those who are very traditional and very trustworthy and very by the book. But, and I want a disclaimer right at the beginning, I don't think drugs are the path for everyone, but the shamanic path often uses substances like ayahuasca, San Pedro cactus, peyotes, Jimson weed. And I've been blessed to do this with a number of these shamans. And when you can get to these states with drumming, you can get to these states in meditation, you can get to these states with singing, with dancing. And I've been blessed to do that in many of those states. But there's a window there with a lot of these substances, especially with a good shaman who can take you there. And you set up reference points that sometimes you can go back to when you're not in those states. And doing ceremony in those states, you realize that the world we live in is a lot like an onion. And the material world is about this big. And the real existence, that larger world, is this big. And ceremony can help us maneuver it. In between going to Latin America, I've led a very blessed life. I was able to start a magazine in San Francisco with a group of people called Magical Blend. And it became one of the optimum New Age magazines. For 27 years, we were sold in all 50 states and all over the world. And then there was this economic depression, but we won't talk about that. Life changes and it's good, even though we don't expect it. And I got to be on stage with Deepak Chopra, Marianne Williamson, Carol Mace, Dwayne Dyer. I got to be friends with Carlos Castaneda, Victor Sanchez, Miguel Ruiz, Florinda Donna, Kenny Eaglefeather, Tasha Arba, Marilyn Tenashende. I got to do ceremony with a lot of these people. When you've done that, you really know that there are tools that can change the world. I'm not Peruvian. I'm not a shaman. I would never claim to be a shaman because I've seen the real things. I do know magic, and I do know ceremony. I grew up in a funeral home. My father was a funeral director. I studied in Nashville for a couple of years to be a funeral director before I decided to do different things with my life, because I did, it's okay, but it's not exactly how I want to spend my time. What's really important about all ceremony is the intent. Intent is focused will. We so scatter our intent. And what ceremony allows us to do is turn off the computer, the TV, the cell phones, and to focus what we want and how we want it to look. And when we focus our will, our desires, our beliefs, our expectations, things change in our lives. They become so much more. They become so much fuller. Deep rituals and ceremonies can be done in all kinds of ways. Most of you have been to one religious service or another. Those are fancy rituals and ceremonies. I grew up in the Catholic Church, and I left it very young, but I learned to appreciate ceremony there. One of the best ceremonies I was ever at was High Mass at Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. It was just amazing. Ceremony can take on all kinds of forms, and how you do it is up to you. There's very traditional ways, as in the churches and in the temples, and in traditional Peruvian and Mexican shamans who have been handed down for generations. And then there's my way. The way I've been taught is that chaos magic is the most powerful. These shamans in the Amazon jungle, they don't care about form, they care about results. And they might throw a rock there, they might sing a beautiful song here, they might wave a feather there, they might scream at you, and it might just break you totally out of your experience. Marilyn Tenashende was an author who seems to have disappeared, as sorcerers often do. But when she was writing her book, she came to my backyard in Northern California on my farm, and I invited my whole staff to meet her, because we were having some controversies with Castaneda, because she and he didn't quite agree. She did ceremony with my staff and friends for a whole day. She sang, we howled, we danced. And afterwards, everyone that was there had a very different experience. I asked her how that was possible, and she said, when you break through the dimensions with chaos, it's sort of like compost. You put in a really messy process, and you get out just the best loom that's just what everyone needs. Now, I like to call in the directions when I do ceremonies. It's not a requirement. As I say, there's a million ways. But if I call in the directions, and some people look at them just as directions, some of them look at them as elemental forces, some of them look at the things, that real beings in each direction. And then I call in the elements, because I think the 4 major elements are very important. And again, people see this just as ceremony, just as symbols, and others see them as each embodying beings. When you do ceremony, you call in who, what? Yeah, that's a question. And sometimes you end the ceremony without really knowing. But you have the option. Whatever you pray to as the divine, you can offer the ceremony to. Or you can do guest appearances. You can call in energies, spiritual energies. Some of the shamans and elders call them allies. They're not human, they're not animal, they're spiritual forces that have a lot of power and are a little tricky to deal with, but you can call them in. There's spiritual entities that we know, that we were raised with, and you can use ceremony as that kind of prayer to what you believe in. And then there's the pantheons of gods and goddesses. I don't preach this, but I believe through personal experiences that the pantheons that others have worshipped through the history still exist, and that those gods and goddesses want to help humanity and have very magical expanded powers. I often pray to Pachamama, to Inti, to Pasamama, to Vaticancha, the gods and goddesses of the Incan pantheon, because they've worked most with me in my life. Let me give you some examples of some unusual rituals that I've taken place of. When I started that magazine and we were starting off, we were all working nights and we were all working days and putting our money in and doing magazine nights and weekends. And the first 3 issues, we couldn't afford any color in the printing. And it's hard to get a professional magazine without color. So I gathered the group of volunteers together, and there was a poet and a comic book artist and a layout artist and a writer and an odd group that many didn't believe in magic. And I said, we're going to do a ritual, we're going to create color in the magazine. Let's all just do this. And we set up the circle. I find ritual is much better to do in a circle. You can do it in a square, a triangle, a diamond, but by putting a circle, either a chalk circle on your garage floor or a circle in your living room with 4 candles, you create sacred space, and it's a natural shape that flows. We created a circle, and we called in the elements. We called on the helps of the gods and goddesses. We called in the spirit of Magical Blend magazine, and we took a talking stick and we passed it around and said that each one of us was going to talk 3 lines about what we wanted to manifest. And the first time the stick went around, it was kind of nice and poetic. The second time it went around, I, in the back of my neck, could feel the energy rising. And when it started the 3rd time, it was like there was a crack of lightning. And many of these people heard it. And we were transported to another dimension. And there, when it went around the 4th time, we all manifested color. And when we closed the circles, we all compared notes. And people who had never done magic and didn't really believe in it said, we're going to have color in that 4th issue. And it was a quirk of synchronicity and unusual happenings. We had color from then on in the magazine. It became professional. Another one, before the magazine, I used to run a concert company for a little while. And we were pretty successful with it. We had large crowds of people coming to hear the rock bands. And one time, pretty rowdy elements came in. And we were concerned because it looked like it was going to turn into a riot. So I gathered everybody that was responsible onto the hill overlooking the concert, and I said, we have to make it rain. Now these were concert people, hippies, rock concert people. They said, we can't do that, and that's not humanly possible. I said, I've seen it down in the Amazon. You have to believe we can do it. Otherwise, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. And concentrate on it raining. Look at what it's going to look like when the rain has come and everybody has left. It wasn't 6 minutes that the rain came down in buckets and it ended the concert. These people's lives were changed forever. They did this with me. Now, on another level, in exploring the Amazon, one time I went to a village, an isolated village in the Amazon with my 2 young children who were adopted from Peru. Because when you make deals with gods and goddesses, you pay off in all kinds of ways. Best thing that ever happened to me. In this village, the tradition was that any male of 18 had to sit in a circle and do ceremony. So I was the only one, and I sat in a circle, and they passed around a pipe that they blew up your nose as they sang and did ritual. Well, the first time my head hurt. The second time I fell back. The 3rd time the pipe came, the top of my head blew off, and little men and women came out and danced around and sang the most amazing song I've ever heard in my life. The next day I woke up in my hammock. I'm sure one of you put me there. I'm not quite sure what happened the rest of the evening or the ceremony, but I asked the shaman, the main shaman in the morning, what was that? And he said, the ceremony is to help you hear your life song. Many people never do. For months afterwards, when I would be sitting in my office doing office work and I would be in a trouble spot, these little beings would come back and sing my life song to me. A ceremony is really powerful with all kinds of effects. I've done ceremonies in Cusco and watched ceremonies in Cusco with traditional Amari and Quechuan people who are the descendants of the Incas and the local tribes and in the Amazon. And I've got to spend time in the Yucatan and done rituals with Mayan and Aztec, which are all ritual. And I even got to spend some time in Africa with some of the native people, which was just otherworldly. I mean, I thought Latin America was exotic. Africa's on another planet and wonderful and one of the things I like to assure people is that you have to, or remind people, is you have to suspend belief, which is hard for a lot of us. And you don't have to even. You can just ask the question that I just love. What if? So, what if this guy isn't full of shit? And what if he's really talking about something that's real? And what if I tried it on my own? And what if it worked? And what if I could change my life? What would that look like? And if you ask that question when you go home after this weekend, if you just turn off all the electronics one night and play with it, because laughter is one of the most powerful things, you just might be surprised at the changes you can make in your life. Perspective and priorities are really important. They sound very Western, but you can't do it all at once. Rome wasn't built in a day. If you try to become the richest person in the world with one ritual, with one ceremony tomorrow, I don't promise you any luck or results. If you say, I'd like my life to get better with this ceremony, I'd like my relationship to get a little better, I'd like my situation at work to get a little better, that's a good place to start. And then when you start with these baby steps and have success, then you can build up on it. The other thing is, you can't do it all at once. You can't say, I want to have the best lawn in the world, I want to have the best garden in the world, I want to have the best relationship in the world, I want to have the... And focus your intent on all of that at once and have it manifest. What the universe wants to know is what we want. What the gods and goddesses want to know, or even Jesus. Me and Jesus were all right. And what he wants to know too is what we want. Now the universe is a contrast, in my book, of free will and fate, predestiny. And it doesn't always give us what we want. I'll tell another little story. When my children turned 13 or 14, I had promised them we'd go back because they would be teenagers and they should do that. And I didn't want them just to be Americanized. And we went back and we lived, 6 or 7 months in Cusco and traveled around. And when we first got off the plane in Lima, we went and checked into our hotel and then went out to eat. And they have this wonderful thing called a menu in Peru, and it used to be amazingly cheap. It's still very cheap. But they give you a big bowl of soup and a meal with lots of sarch and some meat and a dessert for then it was 33 cents. And my daughter was so excited to be in Peru and back to the land of her birth. And she dug into her soup and she pulled out a chicken leg. And she screamed, she ran out of the restaurant. When I finally caught up with her, she said, I'm going home, I made a mistake, I don't care if I was born here. That's how ritual works too. And the universe works too. I once, in San Francisco, thought instead of living downtown, I'd like to live by the beach. So I visualized and did this ceremony to get a beach house. And I saw the sand around it, I saw the house and how it was. And it wasn't 2 weeks, someone almost gave me free rent for 2 months for the summer in this beach house. Unfortunately, I hadn't got all the details right. It was up a hill with 23 stairs, sand all around it, just like I envisioned it, 5 miles from the beach. You gotta be careful with what you ask for and how you ask for it. One more ritual story that kind of fits in here and doesn't, but one time when doing an ayahuasca ceremony, Now, ayahuasca is a very strong substance, and at the time, nobody had told me you were supposed to fast first, and that the longer you fast, the easier it was to do this. And ayahuasca clears out all the poisons in your system. All your fears, it doesn't cure them all, but it makes you look at all your fears, your doubts, the areas you haven't forgiven yourself or others. It gets so bad you want to die. I was throwing up, I was peeing, I was having the runs, I was running into the bushes, my eyes were crying and my ears were leaking wax. I was, halfway through the evening, I was rolled in a corner, I wanted to die. And I would have been better than all these bad thoughts. And this shaman was singing these beautiful songs. And in the morning, I went out and I reached out my hand to the jungle. I couldn't tell where my hand stopped and the jungle began. And it was about a week later I realized, oh my God, all my life I had been thinking about it wrong. The jungle doesn't stop, I don't stop. We're all part of that weave of life, and I got to experience it that day. Well, my wife says I can't tell a story about being a children's musician, a magic worker for children. I got fired because you had to bring them back after you made them disappear. Sorry. My wife is an angel. No, my wife is a goddess. Ceremony, another manifestation of ceremony. I was in Cusco, Peru, somewhere around 5 or 6 years ago, and I'd been there for a while, and I was kind of lonely. I was meeting a lot of people, but it wasn't a real connect. And I sat in my hotel room and I did a ceremony. I didn't ask for a wife. I asked to meet someone that I could get along with, be a friend, have some intimate time with. My wife was in the ruins doing a ritual, different but similar. The next day we both got on a bus from Cusco to Puno, which is the city my son was born in, by Lake Titicaca. After a 5-hour bus ride, we were in love. After quite a long distance courtship, because she lived in Sweden, we ended up in Virginia running 2 businesses and doing magic and writing books together. It's pretty powerful stuff.